Hello and welcome again to the Voice of Rio Grande. I'm one of your co-hosts, David Lawrence. I'm with my other co-host, Dr. Donna Mitchell, and we are very excited that you're with us this afternoon, and we are very excited that we have a very special guest with us today. We are glad that we are here with John Carey. He is the Chancellor of the Ohio Department of Higher Education. He's been there for over 3 years now, and he's going to be talking to us about a number of different things and sharing some information about some exciting things that are going on across the state in higher education, and as it relates to some of the things that are going on in the public school system as well. Welcome, welcome, John. I was told to call you John. Welcome. Thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you for inviting me. It's always an honor and a privilege to be here.
We're happy you're here, John, and we're happy that you're a friend of Rio. I'd like to start out by talking a little bit about RAPIDS. Those are the skills grants, working on collaboration between higher education and business, and targeting the jobs that are in demand in the area. Could you tell us a little bit about the goals and outcomes of RAPIDS?
Sure. The governor, when he went throughout the state, he was talking to employers, and what he found was that many of he was hearing from the employers, the students were not being trained on modern equipment. So what was happening is businesses were generous enough to donate their equipment, but they're donating their old equipment, and the students were learning on that, and then when they went to work, their skills didn't completely align. So what we decided was put more resources into equipment throughout the state. We had a competitive program, and we looked at the map. As a former legislator, I looked at the map where the money went, and the places that it went were good, but it did not have a regional impact. In many places, it needed the help the most and not have the capacity to write the strongest applications. So we rearranged the money. It was in our budget from $2 million to $8 million, and we said to every region of the state, it's not going to be a competitive process anymore. We are going to give each region this amount of money, but in order to receive it, you have to work with the businesses, you have to work with the community colleges, you have to work with the Ohio Technical Centers, you have to work with the 4 years, and you all have to come together and agree on what your vision is for this money and what the regional impact is going to be. I know that in this region, which to be honest, with our region in southeastern Ohio, knowing the challenges that we had, I thought, well, how much help will they need to get this done? And actually, southeastern Ohio came in with the strongest proposal, and they came in first. And so I was really proud of that. The health simulators are something that Rio Grande is going to take advantage of. Industrial maintenance is another need that many of our regional employers need some help with and need some more training in. And the collaboration between Rio Grande and Southern State and Buckeye Hills and the business community has really been impressive. And we're going to continue that. We're going to start again this fall as a new program. And so we're excited about the results, and we think that we can build upon it. And it's a way that we've seen results where the institutions, now they collaborated on that, they're expanding their collaboration in other areas. So we're really proud of the work that you've done in that area, and we're looking forward to building upon it and providing more resources.
And we appreciate the resources because that really helps us to provide more quality programs. The simulators you mentioned, those are state-of-the-art types of equipment that allow students to practice and maybe make mistakes in a safe environment that they couldn't make in a clinical setting. I know with the some of the equipment that we're being able to procure, it's just made all the difference in the world to the learning opportunities for our students.
What I found, when I left the legislature, worked at Shawnee State, and I went out and started talking to employers. And they talked to everybody from Gordon Gee at Ohio State to President McDavis to the president here at that time. And what was happening was there was a big disconnect. The contact was made, but then the resources were not devoted to making that connection. So the employers were frustrated because their needs were not being met, and students were missing that opportunity. Now, health may not be as much because healthcare has had very strong pathways, but to strengthen those connections between the community to build those skills and have the students exposed to those opportunities is really what is the main focus of higher education, especially for our region, and also for our state.
And we've been working with that at Rio because I know Keith Saunders has set up meetings with Kenworth and Chillicothe and L Brands. We went to Columbus and other companies. We went to Peebles and looked at the jet engine companies and looked at what they needed, what were the skill sets, what could we provide for students wanting to go into that area, as well as perhaps training for their employees.
In higher education, we don't have a system in Ohio. A system that means I would be in charge of everything. The Rio Grande has their board. All of our 23 community colleges and 14 four-years have their own boards, plus the privates have their boards. So collaboration is more of a challenge. We have the boards because it makes more sense, especially in a community college, to have that local input. But I think that regional collaboration is where we're going to leverage the dollars that we have, because we know resources are limited. And I was mentioned to President Johnston that I talked to General Mills, and they were talking about the education resources they were taking advantage of here at Rio Grande, and also at Ohio University and at Shawnee State, which is relatively new because they were plugging in, because it's a national company, to national providers. So if we can come together, we all win and fill those gaps for our employers. So I'm excited about it, and I really appreciate your great work in that area.
And we appreciate the funding to help us do that work.
The Ohio Department of Higher Education has a lot of initiatives going on right now, and I know that Ohio is one of the leaders in the country for higher education and a lot of the cutting edge thinking that's going on about how to better provide access to our students, help our students be more successful when they transition from whatever degree, the credential that they're working on, into the workforce. One of those that relates to younger children is the CCP, or College Credit Plus program. Ohio had a number of initiatives, including PSEO, postsecondary education option, as well as some dual enrollment things. And then over the last few years, we developed the CCP program, a College Credit Plus program. Can you talk a little bit about that program and maybe a little bit about how it began and why it began?
Well, College Credit Plus began because, and you're correct, dual enrollment has been around for a long time. And what we found with dual enrollment, which is a good program, was that students who had access to higher education, they were either identified in the school, the top students of valedictorian and salutatorian in many cases, or their parents had connections to get them into dual enrollment, were the ones that accessed dual enrollment. There were many school districts that did an excellent job as providing dual enrollment, but what we also saw was there were barriers in other school districts. For example, we had one school district tell a student that was involved in dual enrollment, well, they could no longer be in the National Honor Society because they were in dual enrollment. And there wasn't it was kind of the Wild West as far as agreements. Everybody had a separate agreement, and it caused there were a lot of barriers for students participating. It worked well in some school districts. Some school districts made it work, but statewide there was many barriers. And what we found with College Credit Plus is we wanted to change the paradigm where the students and the parents made the decisions. We wanted to give them the information directly. They still had to be college ready. They still have to meet the acceptance standards of any place that they went. They still need to talk to their guidance counselor at their high school, but having the information and making the decision what they took and where they went is, we want the students and parents to have that discussion. That being said, College Credit Plus is not for everyone. Even if they were college ready, maybe they're not socially ready. So that's a decision we want the parents and the students to make. There are students that students that are very successful in College Credit Plus that maybe wouldn't be identified in the school or somebody that that people wouldn't think about giving them the opportunity to go to college. So we've seen a doubling of the enrollment. We've gone from about 16,000 to 32,000 students in College Credit Plus. We have learned a lot from the first year. There are things that we need to improve upon where there's issues that we're working with. But the concept that the student, we put the students first, whether in K-12 or in higher education, giving them the opportunity to get college credit while they're in high school and apply that to a pathway is something that we're very staunchly supporting and want to continue to happen. To be honest, there are some school superintendents and associations that have said, well, we shouldn't be paying for college. And my response is that these are taxpayer resources and that we should give the students as much education as we can with the resources that are available. It's a whole new way of thinking about education, which is difficult sometimes.
Yeah.
But we want to see high school and higher education as a continuum. So it's not as much about when people get their high school diploma. We don't want to see that as a stopping point. We want to have them on a pathway to where they're going on to college, or they're going on to some skill or apprenticeship or the military. So that's kind of the thinking that kind of propelled College Credit Plus.
Well, that makes sense. And of course, you mentioned in a previous recording earlier today that there are lots of jobs out there in Ohio that we have not enough people with credentials and the type of preparation that they need to actually get into those jobs.
Yeah, there's about 100,000 jobs. I think there's actually listed about 160,000 jobs in Ohio that are not being filled, that are openings, many of them in the healthcare field. But what we see too, even in our region, where companies had to import talent because they didn't have, we weren't able to find people to come to the region that within the region to fill those jobs. And we know that if we can educate those students with those credentials and that education, and they're able to land a job here, that they're going to stay. And so that's good for the employers, and that's good for the region.
Right.
When I was mayor, now you always have to suffer through a mayor story, but when I was mayor in your recruiting industry, you had to have good roads, you had to have industrial site, and you had to have good schools. And when you talk about good schools, it was mostly about appearance back then. It was 22 years ago is when I was mayor. But now it's talent. So if you have the talent that's available in the region, that's going to help bring jobs to the area. So all of us that drive up to 23 to Columbus every day to work, if we can market that we have students with certain skill set or certain education, that will help us bring more jobs to our region. So I think that's really important.
And of course, that's what the CCP program does, allowing students, and my understanding is that students as young as 7th grade, if they're college ready, can actually begin taking some of those college courses. Can you talk just a little bit about, you mentioned some school districts had some concerns about the payment and all that. Can you talk a little bit about who pays for all of College Credit Plus? How does that work?
Sure. Well, College Credit Plus is at no cost to the student. I don't use the word free because nothing's really free.
Right.
That's true.
But the school district retains a portion of that student's funding at their home district because they are still part of that high school or junior high. In most cases, it's high school. And then the district negotiates an agreement with the higher education institution. We have a default agreement, so we have a model agreement that schools can use. So if they can't agree, they use this model agreement.
Okay.
And so part of the funding that they get for their traditional high school goes to help pay for the high school student. And the colleges also receive state share of instruction funding from our agency to pay for that student.
Okay.
Where challenge has been with textbooks. Textbooks can be very expensive. So that's one of the things that we're talking about, creating a better policy so everybody knows who's responsible for the textbooks and try to moderate the cost of the textbooks. I'm sure Rio Grande does a great job with their traditional students as far as concern about textbook costs. That doesn't happen at every campus. So, if somebody's using a very expensive hundreds of dollars booked, that puts a strain on the school district. So that's one legitimate issue that we need to address.
And unfortunately, that is a legitimate issue, and we face it here, as does every student. The cost of textbooks has just skyrocketed, and it's just part of doing business in higher education. So I appreciate the fact that the department is working on trying to figure out ways of addressing that.
One of the things that we're working on internally is open education resources using Ohio Link and making that more available. There's challenges to that as well. May not be completely cost-free, but hopefully it would be at a reduced cost. But it's going to change. The question is when it's going to change, because the model that we're using now is just not sustainable.
Right.
I've noticed a change in the culture here on our campus because we've had younger students here. And it's interesting to watch those students, and it's actually kind of fun to see them get excited about learning. I had a faculty member recently tell me that she had a class of about 10 students, had one CCP student. That was the brightest student in the class and had the highest grade. And you would think that perhaps that would be the student who might be struggling a bit, but motivated students doing very well, and I think it gives them an opportunity to realize they can be successful in college. And so if I can do this, maybe I can take the next class and be successful.
Well, the 7th and 8th graders you mentioned, that was a legislative addition. That's not something we really advocated for. But we're hearing what you heard, that sometimes since they're in the 7th and 8th grade, they're the most motivated students. There's not many of them, but they're at the top of their class. But there is questions about what classes should they take, what's appropriate, because a 7th and 8th grader taking a course, there are courses where it would not be,
age appropriate.
Would not be age appropriate. So that's another thing that we're going to have to. We want to make sure they take advantage of the opportunities that's appropriate for them, but we're going to have to revisit some of those other issues as well.
And as you mentioned, and I mentioned as well, it does it's open up to 7th and 8th graders, but predominantly it's the high school students who are taking advantage of this, and that's the way it actually should be.
Right.
I have a 10-year-old. He's very bright, as you know, I would be glad to say, but I would also have concerns about him as he moves forward in getting into some of these things, because there is that emotional maturity that happens that you really have to let the student grow up a little bit, and then they can take on some things.
Right, and then there's some online opportunities that may fit. So it's about providing the students the opportunities that are appropriate and giving them that advantage. And I think it's important across the state, but it's very important in our area, because what I see is students taking advantage of it that never thought they could go to college, or their families never thought they could go to college. My youngest son played one of the baseball games. He's playing a baseball game, and the parents had an older brother, and they came and said, "Can my son really go to college?" And and they wouldn't take advantage of the opportunity unless they were given that information directly. Same thing. I've been local stores, and they said, "My son's going to be able to go to college," and it meant so much to them. And the cost is a factor as well. So if a student's able to even knock out a semester during their high school years, that gives them an opportunity to take other courses, have other exploration while they're on campus, or reduce their costs so they can get that graduate degree once they get their bachelor's, or go get their associate and go get their bachelor's. So it's a lot of opportunity. We need to improve upon it. It's not perfect. We knew when we launched it wouldn't be, but I think that we'll continue to work with all of our stakeholders. As it was formed, College Credit Plus included the High School Boards Association, the superintendents, the colleges themselves, community college and 4 years, and a lot of other stakeholders. And so they all kind of signed off. But once it was implemented, those that, almost everyone realizes the value of it. Many of them have constructive concerns that we need to address, but there are some people that just don't want us to do it. So it's very important for us in education to continue to advocate for it, because there are people that would like to have to go back to the old way, which would reduce opportunities for students.
Well, and it is a terrific opportunity for students, especially those students who wouldn't necessarily consider going to college.
Right.
It is really a great opportunity.
Let's shift gears a little bit now and talk about career counseling and how that's tied to student success. And we all know that student success is our goal at Rio Grande, your goal as the chancellor and statewide. And what we want the student to do is identify an area of concentration, an area where they can connect the classroom learning with what's happening in industry. And you touched on it a little bit before, that we have to make sure that we're current in the classroom with equipment and with concepts and with what they will see when they walk out the door and go into employment. We do that a little bit with our advisory committees, but could you talk to us a little bit about the state's view of career counseling?
Sure. You've both been doing this for a long time and are seeing the changes. One of the things that's happening is things are changing so fast. And so even with technology, it's very hard for us to keep up. The state government, for example, it takes us so long to buy something because we go through our process. By the time we buy it, it's outdated or there's a newer version. So it's a greater challenge than ever. I guess the governor has really stressed that students be exposed to what occupations are available by using OhioMeansJobs.com, by having someone talking to them and helping them understand. For example, I'm sure you run across students that are interested in being a nurse, but that's probably not the right career path for them, but you can talk to them about doing something else in the healthcare field. And what we've seen is across the state that always doesn't happen. And I know there's challenges if a student comes in and they want to be a nurse and they're not going to be a nurse. It's a challenge to get them to persist when they realize that's not what they're going to be because of other academically or other skill sets. But giving them the information to help them understand, well, you can do this in the healthcare field, and you can still do what you want to do, but just in a different way, or maybe a healthcare field is not the right place for them, and helping them find what pathway is. So career counseling is really very basic, getting exposed to OhioMeansJobs.com, helping students when they enroll into the college. Hopefully they will do this while they're in high school, have a career plan, and continue to upgrade that as they go through, and a completion plan. Career plan, completion plan, we say those things, but they're kind of both the same, they're very close to being the same thing. But helping people understand what they're spending on their education, what the result's going to be, and what they're going to earn, and where they can go to find a job at the end. Now, some people get very concerned in higher education that we're trying to be, that we're going to be cookie cutter, and that we're not going to consider the student's education or the pursuit of higher education. And that is not what I consider career counseling to be, or aligning workforce. If someone wants to be an English major, and I don't think that any of us would tell them not to be an English major, but you might want to have a conversation with them about, if you want to be an English major, there's 26,000 jobs open in the insurance industry, so you might want to take a technical writing course. So when you graduate, you will have something to fall back on to get a job in the insurance industry, and you make a good living. Then if you want to write your great American novel, you can do that as well. But to have different opportunities, so you don't have debt and that you can't pay for, and that you're not able to make a living. So that's kind of the way we see career counseling. I would take it a step further, is helping people understand in high school and junior high, and even back to elementary school. It's a challenge for us as leaders in education in Ohio, but we really want to start it as they start in their elementary school career and junior high and high school, so they're thinking about this and that they know what opportunities are available. And we're not making judgments about what if they want to go into trades and be a plumber and electrical skills, that's great. What can we do to support that? If they want to go in the military, which is an education pathway as well, besides serving in the military, or what they need to do if they want to go to college, and what jobs are available and what opportunities. So it's something that's really incumbent upon all of us. Parents are a big part of that. As we know, students don't always have that parental support, but more parents and teachers that can provide that at every level, along with the faculty, will give us a better chance for success, and give the students a better chance for success.
What I've found after 30 plus years in higher education is that when that student makes that connection, the learning really occurs. When they realize this is what I want to do, this is my passion, then the courses start to make sense, the student becomes engaged and the student becomes more successful, and then they complete that degree. So I think it's really important. I think that what the state's doing to help us with these students, and as you said early on, the earlier the better. We often get students who don't know what they want to do when they come to college. So we help guide them with looking at interests and talents and trying to connect. And Ohio Means Jobs is a great website. I go to that frequently to see what are the jobs in our area, because typically our students prefer to stay in the area.
And I think it's important because many of our students don't realize that there are opportunities in the area. And so many times they don't have a lot of hope, or they think they can do the same thing dad or mom did and it'll work for them, but unfortunately the economy's changed, and going straight out of high school working at the plant for 40 years just is very rare at this point. So no matter what you do, we're all going to be involved in career changes and lifelong learning, so we just need to give them the best opportunity that we can.
That's true, and it's good to get them thinking about that early on. Even in elementary school, when a 8-year-old or a 7-year-old is thinking, I want to be a fireman or I want to be a policeman. Well, that may be the case, and they may want to do that but at least it gets them thinking about what is it that you want to do, and especially as Dr. Mitchell mentioned, getting them to tie together, this is the education that I'm getting, and here's why. Here's where it's going to. That pathway is so important.
Well, I know a couple people that live in the area that telecommute to Washington, D.C. every day. They're telecommuting to a building close to the White House. So, there'll be opportunities. That offers opportunities to stay in the area as well. So we won't even know what the opportunities are as we move forward.
Technology has changed so much, our society, and every way we think about it. You're right. You don't take a job right out of high school into a career, by and large now, into your local plant. It could happen, and great if it does. But if it doesn't, it's good to know that there are other opportunities. And we appreciate the Ohio Department of Higher Education helping to pull together all the different things that are going on across the state in helping our students in Ohio succeed and figure out what they want to do.
And we appreciate your great work as the Chancellor. We appreciate the support that you've shown to Rio Grande and to the state, and keep up the good work.
Well, thank you very much.
And we appreciate your time sharing this morning with us. We appreciate your time in being and watching this, and hope you've learned from it. Please join us again when we come back with another show, and enjoy this great summer weather. Thank you, everybody.